Welcome back again, students. So let's move on to the last and third part of our session. Uh, we just concluded discussion on the three controversial experiments. Now we'll move on and see some other aspects of ethics and research participation. And the first one is consent from the participant or any deception towards the participant. Now, what is deception? Obviously, this deception is what its dictionary meaning would mean. Deception is telling something else to the participant and actually doing something else. Well, this is kind of a dilemma here, because if you tell the participant everything, then they would know what they are expected to do, and they would, if they want to continue with the experiment, and particularly if the experiment is paying them something, maybe they would like to keep doing what you expect them to do. So they would be doing a certain they would be exhibiting a certain behavior that you like, so that you can keep them a participant of that research. So there's a dilemma here. I'm not going to give you a solution to it. My aim is just to make you aware of such situations that can come in the way of your research. So ideally, there should be nothing that you know and the research participants do not know. Second is the principle of voluntary consent. And what is it? It is an ethical principle that people should never participate in research unless they are explicitly and freely willing to participate. So this principle should always be followed. Then what is informed consent? Informed consent is a statement. It is usually a written statement that explains aspects of a study to participants and asks for their voluntary agreement to participate before the study begins. Now, what is the difference between principle of voluntary consent and informed consent? Well, not much. It's a thin line, but the first one is a principle, and the second one is kind of the legal form of the manifestation of that principle. Well, the third thing, covert observation. Again, a dilemma. Should you be observing any participants without them knowing that you're observing them? Well, if you do that, it will be kind of an infringement on their privacy. But if you don't do it, then maybe they'll exhibit the behavior that would not be a normal behavior. In this context, a famous study that is called the Hawthorne study, they were conducted at the Hawthorne plant of Western Electric Company in 1920s in the US. Uh, it is the Hawthorne effect is a type of reactivity in which individuals they modify an aspect of their behavior in response to their awareness of being observed. And well, this situation, it can undermine the integrity of research, particularly the relationships between variables. So if a factory worker, as it was in this Hawthorne study, the factory workers, they knew that they were being observed, so they increased the rate of their production. So the researchers who wanted to see a particular thing, they could not see that real thing because the participants were knowing they were being observed and they exhibited a certain behavior. There were many parts of this study. One was related to the effect of light, the effect of increasing light on the productivity of employees. So in the end, they could not really establish whether the increase of their productivity was due to increased light, or was it due to the fact that they were actually knowing that they were being studied. So this is again a small dilemma that you'll have to face when you are conducting your research, whether you should observe the participants with them knowing that you're observing them, or without them knowing that you're observing them. Again, a thin line, but as a researcher, you'll have to make that call. Okay, another aspect is special populations. What are special populations? They are basically research participants who, because of factors such as their age, incarceration, which means being in prison, or potential coercion, which means forcing them to do something uh, without their explicit will, or less than full physical, mental, emotional, or other capability, they may lack complete freedom or awareness to grant voluntary consent to participate in the study. So, while they may have given you voluntary consent, they may not have the full ability to understand what's going on because of various factors. They may be a special population. So, uh, if you have in your sample you have any special populations, you should be very aware that that extra efforts are made to ensure that their rights and their concerns are addressed. Now, there's this thing called a placebo group. Placebo group basically means that it works mostly in medical experiments. So what happens is that there are two groups of participants. When you are testing a drug and you want to find out whether it actually reduces a certain condition or not, say you are testing a headache drug, what you would do is that you would give half of the participants that drug, that headache drug, and another half they'll be given maybe uh, tablets made of flour or something. Basically, not that drug, something that has no effect at all. So that group which got the fake kind of drug, something that had no effect at all, that is called placebo group. So what happens is that when you give somebody a particular drug and another person who is given placebo, they are not equally exposed to that experiment. So a crossover design means that you should do experiment in two phases. In the first phase, you should give drug to group A and placebo to group B. And in the second phase, you should give drug to group B and placebo to group A. So this kind of design that you see in the red and blue diagram at the center bottom of the slide, it is called a crossover design, and the idea is that all groups receive the treatment but at different times so that discomfort or benefits are shared and inequality is not created. All right, the next aspect of ethics and research participation is the privacy of the participants. What is privacy? Privacy is basically a person's ability or maybe a group's ability to seclude themselves or information about themselves and thereby express themselves selectively. So we cannot force people to give us information about them, or we cannot force groups to give us information about them. Privacy should never be infringed. The second aspect of privacy is anonymity. Anonymity is basically the ethical protection that participants remain nameless. Their identity is protected from disclosure and it remains unknown. So, if you can ensure that anonymity is afforded to all the participants, you'll save them from many possible harms. Then is confidentiality. What is confidentiality? It's again the ethical protection for those who are studied by holding research data in confidence or keep the data secret from public, not releasing information in a way that permits linking specific individuals to specific responses. So how do you do it? You do it by presenting data only in an aggregate form, like so many percent of people said this. Instead of saying that Mr. So and so said this and Miss So and so said this, we say 20% of the people said this and 80% of the people said this. So confidentiality is again an important aspect of research when individuals and their responses are informed. Now, the thing that you see on the last bullet, it's institutional review board. What is institutional review board? Normally, what happens is that since ethics is now an important aspect of research, every university has constituted a board which looks at your research proposal from an ethical perspective, and it kind of examines your study details before your research is allowed to begin. Yeah. So there's this another thing called information as property. It kind of flows from privacy. Uh, you cannot infringe the privacy of an individual. Similarly, you cannot infringe upon the information that they have. It is their property, so it can only be used with their permission. Well, the final aspect of ethics and research participation uh, is that there are certain populations or certain groups that have mandated protection. For example, there are laws in Pakistan regarding transgenders. You cannot go beyond a certain line when you are collecting information about them. You can do that with regular populations, but you cannot do it uh, for people who have mandated protection. Similarly, uh, there may be laws or other legal bindings about putting workers to risk when conducting experiment, or putting patients to risk when conducting medical experiments. So when you're conducting a research, you should be sure that you have knowledge about all the legal, the law side of that issue that you are researching. Then you must also check whether your organization or your university or your hospital, they have a written code of ethics. Mostly, almost all organizations have a written code of ethics. You must go through that code in detail and follow each aspect of it, because not following it would become kind of a legal problem for you later. We talked about Nuremberg Code or Nuremberg Code earlier. What is it? Basically, it is a written code which was published after the Nuremberg trials were conducted. What were the Nuremberg trials? There were military courts. There were military courts that conducted specific trials on mostly German, uh, what we call war criminals. Their acts were mostly related to, as I said earlier, uh, crimes that they committed in the name of research. Uh, well, basically, what we see in India today, it is about racial purity, or on the assumption of superiority of a particular race. What they are doing is that they are cleansing other people. So that is exactly what Nazis did before World War II. There was this idea of eugenics in Germany, which meant that they kind of protected mixing of races in Germany. They thought that their race was superior, so uh, people were not allowed to cross marry and other things related to it. And in the end, what they did in the end was that they did crimes in the name of experiments or medical experiments. They were put to trial at Nuremberg, and basically these military courts, they were constituted of allies. Allies means the people who were against Germany in World War. And they did so many. There were many outcomes of those trials, and one of the outcomes was the Nuremberg Code, which is now uh, considered a gold standard for protection of participants in researches. Okay, finally, there are a few principles of ethical social research. I'll quickly go through them because having studied what we studied today in this session, you should quickly grasp what it means. The first one is responsible individual, which means uh, ethics should be kind of built in into your behavior rather than your supervisor or your university giving you a list of ethical boundaries and you confining yourself to those boundaries. It should be built into your behavior. Second is no personal gain. Your research should be kind of neutral. Whatever way it goes, its outcomes should be valuable for the scientific community, and you should not gain from it. If you have a potential gain from a possible outcome of the research, then obviously you would drive your research in that direction. So there should be no gain for you. Thirdly, there should be some form of consent from all the participants. How we do it, we normally include it in our research questionnaires at the beginning. Some implied form of or explicit form of consent in which the individual agrees to participate in our research. Then we should be honoring anonymity and confidentiality of the participants. We should never coerce them or humiliate them. We should avoid deception if we are able to. Deception not in a negative sense, but in the sense that uh, whether all that is known to me as a researcher, is it known to the participant or not. So if there's a difference in these two things, there's kind of deception. So if you're able to avoid this deception completely, you should avoid it. Then detect and remove negative consequences of the research. It could be in many ways. It could be by not mentioning their names, by not mentioning their organization, and so on. Then you should be able to anticipate repercussions of your research. Maybe your research is funded by a particular company. Let's say you're a doctor and your research is being funded by a firm that makes a particular drug. So if your findings come out that the drug is ineffective, you should be knowing what that would mean for your relationship with that firm. So if there's a negative outcome possible, you should not undertake that research at all. Then there should be complete transparency in sponsorship. If somebody is sponsoring your research, everybody should know clearly which money goes where, so that there's no way anybody should be able to put a finger on your intent in the research. Maybe the account should be so clear that there should be no indication that some money could have gone in the wrong account or something. There should be complete transparency. Then, if you're researching outside Pakistan, in another country, you should be cooperating with the host nation. Then there should be transparency in the results. All the participants, if they are expecting to know the results, they should know it and in the most transparent way. Then there should be consistency between data and results. Your data should be speaking the same language as your research, your results. Your results should be a reflection of your data. This is particularly important in qualitative researches because data is not very crisp. It is usually not very empirical and can be interpreted in multiple ways. So you should be sure that the results, they are a reflection of the data. And finally, highly methodological standards. In other ways, the norms of scientific community that we studied earlier should be followed in principle. All right. So uh, a few words on the sponsors of the research. Well, there's this concept of whistleblower or whistleblowing. Who is a whistleblower? A whistleblower is a person who recognizes an unethical or illegal practice in an organization and voices his or her opposition to that practice, and then attempts to stop the practice through organizational channels. May not be successful, and maybe that she's being punished for that attempt, but still voices uh, his or her opinion. Uh, Now, this person is a whistleblower, and almost every country they have laws for the protection of whistleblowers. Uh, what is normally done is what is mandated is that first of all, that person is removed from any hierarchy that could harm him. For example, if I blow a whistle against my boss, then my next evaluation report is not to be written by that boss and I'm transferred to another place. And then whatever I said, it is investigated, and all if anything illegal was being done, that is corrected. So whistle blowing is an important aspect when sponsored research is being conducted. If you see anything that is wrong, that if you see that your research was given to you with bad intent, what does bad intent mean? It could mostly mean to arrive at a predefined result. If you think that is being done, you must blow the whistle immediately, and you should use the legal and the law channels to protect yourself. All right. So maybe somebody's trying to ask you to suppress your findings, do not publish your findings. This is usually uh, related to medical researches, but it could come in social sciences as well, because uh, a particular um, a particular pressure group uh, may not like uh, may not like that a certain outcome about a society or a group of society is published, so they might ask you to suppress your findings. In that case, whistleblowing, it becomes your responsibility. Finally, concealing true sponsor, again, that is against the ethics, uh, because again it's very relevant to medical researches, because if true sponsor of a research is a manufacturer of a drug, and the research is about the effectiveness of that drug, the true sponsor must always be known to every participant. Okay, finally, the qualities of a good researcher. Now, before we discuss them, let me say that explicitly. If you do not have a particular quality, it doesn't mean you cannot become a good researcher. Research is usually not done by one individual. It's a group, and group means you, your supervisor, maybe some other MS or PhD students under your supervisor who are helping you in your research. So even if you have some some aspect that you think is missing in you, it could always be filled in by one of your friends or the group members, or a fellow researcher. But as a group, you must ensure that, or as from the perspective of all the resources that you have at your hand, you must ensure that these skills are available to you through a friend or through a research group member once you conduct your research. The first one is communication skills. The researcher should be able to communicate freely with the participants and other stakeholders. And communication means speaking, writing, talking on telephone, maybe emails, letters, or talking to your seniors or supervisors. If there are any protocols of communication in a particular university, you should be knowing them. So communication skills important. Then intellectual skills. What does that mean? It means you should have the technical and knowledge related skills that are required to conduct research in that particular area. It could be statistics, it could be research methodology, it could be steps that are to be followed in a particular research, and so on. Then IT skills, some IT software, some some other specialized software. They are these days very important when you're conducting your researches, particularly the quantitative research. So you should have, in my opinion, a good grip on at least one stats software. Maybe it could be SPSS, it could be Minitab, or there's so many. So you should have grip on at least one statistical software. Then organizational skills. You'll have to go through a lot of steps of research, and at every step uh, you would either be reading things, you'll be collecting data, you'll be archiving data, you'll be organizing it, you'll be getting uh, information out of data, and then you'll be drawing your conclusions. So you should be able to organize all these things in a logical way so that you could follow all the research steps in the minimum possible time with the best utilization of the resources you have at your hand. Then you should be motivated, and you should have perseverance, because many problems they come in your way when you're doing a research, particularly your PhD research. So you should have a lot of perseverance. So उर्दू में हम कहते हैं लगे रहना, मुश्किलात आएँ तब भी लगे रहें. That is perseverance. So you should persevere in your research irrespective of the problems that you face. जो एक आयत है, इन्नमल उसरे युसरा, मुश्किल आती है तो उसके बाद आसानी भी आती है. तो that is what happens in your research. You face a stumbling block, but very soon you realize that that block was actually a reason to improve the quality of your research. Then independence. This is something like what we studied earlier. No interest in the research. You should be an independent researcher who is not following directions about it research from a sponsor or somebody. It should be you should be able to generate results that are a reflection of your data instead of generating results that are being forced on you. So you should be an independent researcher. And finally, personal strengths and weaknesses. Everybody have their personal strengths and weaknesses. So you should kind of impassionately analyze yourself. And if you don't have any of the strengths that are required from a good researcher, you should make that up by having good research group members or friends at your hand who could fill in those gaps that you think you have. It could be related to writing, it could be related to proofreading, it could be related to collecting data, or anything. So the idea is that all these qualities, all these skills, they should be available to you, maybe not in your person, but they should be available to you in some way. All right.